Welcome to the Diversity Pivot Podcast. I'm your host, Julie Kratz. This season, we're having sweaty conversations for change. We're talking with guests about uncomfortable conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion needed to pivot towards positive change. We do this podcast because it's important that all voices are heard, all people are seen, and all people feel a sense of belonging in their workplaces. Let's meet this week's guest. Welcome to the Diversity Pivot Podcast. Today we are joined with Vandana Khanna. She is the Director of Transformation Digital Automation Practices at Unilever. She has expertise in emerging technologies like RPA, chatbots, and AI machine learning. She also holds an MBA in finance from the University of Pittsburgh and a chemical engineering degree from IIT in India. She is a mentor of women in tech and an avid supporter and champion of people of color. She leads DEI and belonging initiatives with her organization and never shies away from sharing her own journey, her own struggles as an immigrant in this country, and then establishing herself in the tech industry over time. Welcome to the show, Vandana.
Thank you. Super happy to be here.
Well, I'm excited to hear your story. Let's start there. Tell our listeners your story.
Absolutely. It's always emotional when you're going back several years and talking about it. So I came to this country as an immigrant 20 years ago, and the plan was just to have an MBA and go back. But that did not happen. I stayed here and started my career, built my family, everything all happened here. But coming as an immigrant, it was not an easy road, I would say. Like many other immigrants, I also faced a lot of challenges. And at that point, I never realized there was something called microaggression. Now I know it, I know the definition. In the last couple of years, I think this term has been floated around quite a bit. But several years ago, it was not known, or people never realized it. Things were happening, and people just either kept quiet or moved ahead with that. So, my biggest thing was when I came here and I was studying or started my career, there were several times I was compared with people like me who were Asians, Indians, wearing glasses, having black hair. So many times people would just mistake me for someone else. And the biggest challenge, or I face that, how should I correct them? How should I tell that no, I am so and so. My name is Vandana. Call me by my name, and don't confuse me with someone else. But I never stood up for myself, and many times my name was not said correctly, and I said it's okay, it's fine, people will learn over time. But I should have corrected. And the other thing was, there were several times I was called by a different name. One thing is mistaking someone for someone else, but I was called by a different name. And on top of it, many people said, why don't you shorten your name? Because people can't say it. And on top of it, you will never
Oh
find
my
a job in this
gosh.
country that if you don't shorten your name. I felt through that trauma for several years. And unfortunately, at that point, I did not find, or I did not strive myself to find mentors who could tell me, no, it is okay, and we have dealt with the same situation. I fought for it alone, whether it was crying alone at night or crying in front of others or having a breakdown because I could not deal with it and I had no idea what was going on. And many times it also happened if I was in meetings, I felt people did not understand me. And then if I would repeat, then they will say, sorry, can you say it again? And at that point, I would think that, oh, maybe I said something incorrectly. I could not even understand why somebody would ask me to repeat it. And the only thought came to my mind at that moment was maybe my accent is not doing its thing. It's confusing for others to understand me. And then I had this very bad imposter syndrome for several years. And now I know the term, what it means. Earlier on, I did not, but it was eating me constantly because I could not say that my accent was fine. If people can comprehend me, I'm enough. But I did not have that courage to stand up and say, and I would go in my shell almost all the time. This happened to me for at least 5, 6 years in this country when I landed and studied, started my career, and interacted with others. And I also realized over time that I did not understand the jokes others were making around me. I did not understand that how should I even start the conversation. It was very difficult. I mean, people who come from different countries have these cultural challenges, but a person who's on the other side might not understand it. And immigrants sometimes do not have the courage, like I did not, to say, no, in our culture, we listen, we understand, we appreciate and honor the hierarchy, and we respect. If you say something, then and you are not able to comprehend us, we'll probably be quiet, because and at that point we will think the mistake was ours. And it happened to me for years, as I said. But after that I realized something got to change. I cannot survive like this, because that guilt moment, that uh, I would say uncomfortable and uneasiness everywhere was not right, and that was becoming a problem for me and for me to progress anywhere. I started finding mentors. I started talking to people who looked like me. That is first thing I started seeking out. Then I started expanding my horizon to find people who look different than me, to give me an opinion, a view. Maybe I'm missing something, because earlier on I was trying to fit in, and now I realize there is nothing called fit in, because but you have to lean in or flex in. And if someone is able to guide you through it, it becomes easier. So that is what happened over time. These mentors helped me, and I formed these board of advisors who started supporting me. They said, no, it is fine, your accent is perfectly fine, and you are going through a challenging times. Make sure people understand you. I learned some tips over the time. If I was speaking very quickly, I started to tone down a bit, started speaking, slowly. Because sometimes it happens when you try to convey a point and you have two languages, you are converting one language in your head to speak in English. And that is what was happening with me. I was listening in, converting it in my own language, and then I responded back in English. And that takes a few more seconds than a person who is a native English speaker. So these things were troubling me, and people started shedding some light that this is what actually is happening. And I started reading, and then I realized, oh, exactly, this is the problem I'm having. So I am no, I won't say I'm different. I'm very similar to quite a few people. So I should just break these barriers and break these stereotypes and start speaking up more. And then when I started moving up in my career, I realized many more women, especially of color, started approaching me, and they started resonating with what I was saying. I started talking about myself, being as open as I could. And then when I started communicating my struggles, I started making more connections with people. They said, yep, we face the same thing. How did you overcome it? And over time, you realize you are not alone. And that is a great connection to have, because you become a community, you start listening, you start understanding, and then you start flourishing and growing together. And that's how I found my camaraderie. I found different people. I would say everyone mentored me, every color helped me to grow into a place where I am right now. So I'll
Mm,
pause there. But yeah, this journey was not easy, but I
no.
have no regrets, and I'm very happy to come to a place where I am right now.
Oh, well, I empathize with your story, Vandana. And I think a few things I picked up from your story is the importance of names. Um, how often does that happen to immigrants and to folks that have names that fall out of, quote, I'm air quoting here, the typical American name? Life's a lot easier when you're John or Jane. My daughter's
Yeah.
name is Jane, to be fair. And my name is Julie, which, very rarely do people struggle. My maiden name was very difficult, it was German, and it was very hard for people to pronounce. So I can empathize a little bit there, but that's very different. Your first name is your identity.
Yeah.
You want to be, that's one of our favorite words as human beings, is hearing our own name. And that's important. And I think listeners recognizing that one thing actually, which she did in our Zoom before this podcast, was typed out the syllables of her name, of how to pronounce it. And I really thought, I was like, I know how to say your first name. I have a friend, Vandana. I knew the tha, I knew that instead of the hard D, but I did not know one thana. And here I am, well intentioned to somebody that thinks that they have a friend with the same name that I've been pronouncing her name incorrectly all these years. Shame on me. And the other thing I'll share, and in addition to really learning people's names, is even if you have, a name like mine, where people might easily here in America be able to say it. Just like pronouns, even if you think it's super obvious, sharing how your name's pronounced in your social handles, and leading with that so that others that are more marginalized, folks like yourself that have different types of names, don't have to do all that legwork, because oftentimes it's exhausting. And
Yeah.
certainly, don't ask somebody to change their name or make it
Yeah.
easier for you. That's just, really yucky and unfortunate behavior, that I know happens a lot. People nickname somebody without asking if the nickname's okay, or shorten
Yeah.
the name, or just, initial it. That makes it easy for you, but that doesn't make it easy for the other person. So always, 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 folks, get to know people's names. And I like to say it, try it first before asking. And I usually 50% of the time get it wrong. But when I'm on a quick Zoom, facilitating, I often will say that, hey, I might get this wrong, but I'm going to go for it. And the person will really nicely in the chat, usually private message me with how to say it, or, hey, nice try, or actually you got it right, which is my favorite, but not always the most common response. And so it really know people's names, the importance of it, and be willing to share how you pronounce your name, and also be willing to learn other folks' names. Mom, that I know you, I just did the V again. One thing, um, thank you for your story. I'm curious, in the work you do with DEI, in at Unilever, what experiences have you seen? What has the journey been like? And what lessons learned might you share with our listeners that, are very much on the journey? Some could be starting the journey, some could be knee deep like y'all. But we're all on that journey. What has that journey been like for you?
Yeah, so my day job is different. And because I'm so passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, I said I'm going to lead this. And that's how this journey started for me personally, when I started realizing there is some work can be done here, and there is always opportunity to do something better. And that's where I said, okay, let's figure it out together. So it's a journey, it's never an ending journey. How do you make sure people are aware and educated? Every journey starts there. So make sure that everyone around you is aware that color exists. That is the most important point and most important step in the journey. I have heard several people who say that, oh, I'm colorblind. Everyone looks similar to me. I don't even see it. It doesn't even matter. And this is something I've heard several times in my experience, not just in my current company, but outside. So the most important thing is for people to understand is being color aware is the important step in the journey, and understanding that people around you come with unique skills and unique perspectives because of their heritage, because of their race, because of their intersectionality, because of their sexuality, everything. So it depends on the person. Respect the person as they come. That is why people are hired into an organization. And so everywhere it's a journey. I don't think anyone has cracked that nut entirely, but people are figuring it out. Understanding, awareness, open, safe environment, asking people to have a voice at the table wherever they are at, and whatever hierarchy they are. And those things have been a work in progress, but we have come very far. And I feel very proud of this initiative we took on. And now the most important thing is our teams, our people feel empowered that we are doing something right in the right direction. And the employee resource group, the business resource groups, whatever people call it these days, are all coming together to talk about it. So it's absolutely a journey. It does not stop at one point, and we cannot say that it's done. It's one and done. It's enough. We have done a lot. No, there are so many people who still need some awareness and some learning and coaching sessions. And those
Mhm.
people have to be on this bandwagon almost all the time. You cannot leave them behind. Sometimes you have to give them nudges that, guys,
Yeah.
come on, let's listen from others who are facing it. And
This
be,
is real.
yeah,
It's
this is real.
people
Yeah,
think it's happening somewhere else. This is one of the ones I get.
exactly.
It's like,
And
oh,
that
that
is,
doesn't happen here. We're a great company. We're focused on that. That bad stuff's happening somewhere else. And it's like, do you not have you ever listened to lived experiences of someone of color, someone with a disability, someone in the LGBTQ community? Just trade stories, much like your
yeah,
story at the beginning. And once you hear those heartfelt stories, your empathy muscle starts to kick in, and it really helps you lean into that conversation. One thing I'm curious as we go into 2022, what are you working on? What if we advance fast forward a year from now, what are you hoping to achieve? What does good DEI look like in this coming year?
so for me, the vision for DEI, the perfect DEI strategy would be then everyone around is completely aware and not neglecting or not avoiding this conversation. This conversation has to be authentic, coming from the heart, from everyone, and everyone says, okay, I'm not in any uncomfortable situation. And these are happening right now. So it should come to a point where people say, yep, talk about anything, and I'll be either listening because I've not felt it before, or I will participate because I have felt it and I was living and breathing it. That would be the perfect situation when we come to a point where we embrace it, where we feel it, where we understand the other person, where that person is coming from. It should not be, as we were talking earlier, that, oh, it is happening somewhere else and it does not concern me, because people around me, immediate people around me, are not affected by it. Everyone is affected by it in some way, shape, or form, whether it's our extended friend circles or someone we know of. So that would be a perfect place where people start respecting everything, wherever you come from, whatever you come from, whatever you come with, rather, and then whatever you want to convey, and how open and honest those conversations become, which brings the whole camaraderie and brings that authentic being forward, and everyone says, yep, I'm happy to talk about who I am. That will be the perfect scenario. And I think that will open up a lot more doors when people say, yep, this is the place I truly want to be. This is the place where I see I belong. And belonging is the most important thing. I think we focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and that many organizations have done a great job. It is belonging which will be the next big thing. You hire the right people, you hire the diverse candidates, you give them everything, you do whatever, but do they truly feel they belong? Do they truly feel that they are in the right place? And I will use this word fitting again, because sometimes people use that. Do I fit in this culture? And that's where it should be. Yep, I like this culture. It's not about fitting in. I flex and I embrace this culture. So culture runs supreme and culture speaks volume. So that would be my vision. That would be the best thing, where we all run together harmoniously, depending on who we are,
Mhm.
despite our backgrounds.
Yeah. Culture and belonging. I like it. That B factor that I know a lot of organizations have added that to their DEI language. We had in a previous podcast about DIBS, that framework, diversity, inclusion, belonging, because you're obvious. D doesn't work without I doesn't work without B. And B is pretty aspirational. I don't know of many organizations, if at all, where if they truly dig deep on the belonging factor, and people really feel like they can be their full selves, that they really feel the psychological safety to share things that are hard and be okay. So it's a journey, like you said, and that's what we're aspiring to. I wonder, one thing, what about the tech industry? So I know you focus, a lot of your work and a lot of your background has been in tech, and to the point that people make is like, oh, well, that's our industry's problem. Again, this kind of blame shifting that happens. Why is that harmful to say that? And then is that true? Is it really different in the tech industry? I'm curious what you think about DEI in tech.
No, it is not. I would still say it's a level playing field depending on where you see it from. And it everything starts from the top. And then it goes down, and then it becomes more of a horizontal, and then it becomes a grassroots movement. So as long as people are talking about it and people see it that it is authentic, we are coming back to the same conversation. As long as people feel that something is coming from the heart and that is true, it is walking the walk and talking the talk. It should not be a lip service. People are actually doing it, embracing it, and people can see those behaviors so much, then they start believing in it. Tech is no different, finance is no different. I am at a cusp of both finance and tech. But in tech, absolutely not. Women feel they cannot progress in tech, and there has to be a support system. A lot of work has to be done in every organization and every department, so to speak, because they have to make a conscious effort. If there are more men around, how are they taking the females to the on that journey forward? How are they creating a space where women have a a seat at the table and they have a voice which is prominent and people are listening to it? Many times those spaces are not created. When those spaces are created, people thrive, but when they are not, and it could be anywhere, and usually women have a tough time in tech because they don't find the right champions, they don't find the right mentors, the right spaces are not created, they are scared. And like the situation I was having earlier, many women go into that shell, and it's very hard to come from there unless someone holds their hand and say, okay, you are fine, move on, move on. Sometimes we as women also keep on just feeling guilty about things which have happened. So the most important thing is, how do you get rid of that guilt and continue down that road of move on, and find help, right? Find the right help who can support you, guide you, and take you forward. It's easier said than done, but when you are in the mix, find the right champions. When you find those
Mhm.
right champions, they will help you.
Yep.
It takes time to build those relationships. You have to nurture them for some time, but don't lose your, I would say, sight on the prize. Have
Yeah.
your goals very clear. If you are clear, people will realize that this person is not backing down and we have to help.
They'll take you serious. I love that. Be clear. We say intentional, be consistent. Um, and I would say, listeners, if you're somebody in a leadership role inside an organization, you really have a duty and obligation to step into this conversation and support others, just by nature of your position, to share that power, to share that access to power that you likely have. One thing I'm curious about the conversations you're having. Just kind of going full circle on this, from your story to the stories of others inside your organization and folks in the DEI community. What stories are you hearing now? Because I think it's easy, just like a lot of the myths we're dispelling today, is, last summer was so hard. These stories came out and people realized racism still exists. But now, I mean, I think people, kind of go back and they think, oh, this is over, back to normal. I can go back to my safe space where I feel comfortable. What stories are you hearing now? What is it like, for folks experiencing the adversity that comes sometimes with diversity, or folks that are really championing change?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are two things I'm hearing. One, that yes, we are much better than where we were before. So, which means those 50% are working hand in hand with the people who are raising the voice and who are continue to be given the space to raise the voice. So that is one chunk. Rest is, I guess, probably, or I would divide into three. The 30% who are feeling good about it, 30% don't care, and the 33% or 30% are the ones who are thinking about more change has to happen, because we have not solved all the problem. So I would say, yeah, we have not solved all the problems. There are still so many challenges. Like think about 2020, 2021 brought to light the challenges, the stop AAPI hate. Nobody realized that Asians also can experience problems. It was always about the model minority myth. They always have everything you can ask for. But then when people started educating the others and bringing the right people on the forum and actually sharing the data, the eyes were opened up. At that point, people said, "Oh, I had no idea. Really? This is happening around me." So that was something which came to limelight. Black Lives Matter became a big movement. A lot of things were happening with black and brown, everyone. But when you bring this forward, then people realize, but this work is not done. So, as I said, those 30 or 33% people still feel the work is not done because there are many things still have to happen. Lot of rules have to be designed, lot of policies have to be reframed, redesigned. Right people have to be on the right seat to understand it. Some movement has to happen, up, down, above, beyond, sideways, so that people understand and right people are talking about it constantly. So it will take some time.
Yeah.
This is a long journey ahead of us in this country, and I'm happy that a lot of things have changed in these years since I landed as a young kid to now, because I have
Mhm.
seen people now think twice before they open up and say. And I'm seeing the younger generation who is actually graduating from schools, and now they are also mindful. Should I say it? Should I not? Should I be aware that how this person is feeling? So the conversation has changed
It
thanks to
has.
social media, and people are bringing those attentions to limelight. There are some brave souls who are recording things. We know that is how George Floyd incident came to light, right? Because someone
Yeah.
recorded it.
Yeah. The
So
video. It's almost like you
power.
have to see it to believe it.
Yes, and power to those folks who are standing up. So world is becoming a different place, a better place, but a lot more work has to be done. Now, if we think back several years, yes, journey was hard, but the rewards are also there. People are paying attention, and now more work has to be done. Now the power is on in the hands of the next gen. They
Mhm.
also did not have. I mean, they have to continue. They cannot stop the work.
Well,
Uh,
and they need tools.
yeah,
As a millennial, I think we were
yeah,
we were tasked to fix the diversity problem. And
yeah,
it's like, well,
exactly.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Like we
yeah.
don't have that much power. We're
We
finally
don't have that. Yeah.
finally
Now
the
Gen
majority of
Z.
the workforce. But yeah,
Yeah.
Gen Z, same story. We can't kick
Same
the can
story.
and keep
Yeah.
hoping it gets better miraculously without tools and
No,
information.
they will have to rely on the millennials and the people before that to
Yep.
fix it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the model minority. I have to admit, even as a DEI practitioner, I'd heard that before. I hadn't studied it before the events of the spring, especially, and just being horrified by what was happening to Asian Americans here in
Yeah.
our country. And I have very good friends of Asian descent that are first generation here in this country, and many that were born in China and in India and came over. And there's
Mhm.
many more countries, of course, in Asia. But I remember a spring being asked by one of my corporate clients to do a panel and talk about allyship for the AAPI community. And I was like, oof, I don't know if honestly, I don't know if I should do that. I'm not as well versed as I'd like to be. So I did a lot of homework on it and talked to my friends that were very nice enough to share their experience. And this model minority thing, I was like, huh, it's like it's a perfect way to divide and conquer. And I see
Yeah.
this play out a lot of it's pitting black and brown people against each other and keeping because we're so much stronger when we're all together fighting
Yeah.
against racism because it looks a little different based on your group, but it still has the same ugliness to the core. And by saying, well, the Asians did it, y'all need to just put yourself up by your bootstraps, and
Mhm.
Black people need to sort this out. And it contributes to an unfortunate stereotype of laziness and blame shifting on Black people and of other descents as well. That the Asians somehow did it, so therefore you should too. And all of this, I don't believe. It's just the stereotype and the unfortunate outcome of a white supremacist culture. So I agree, Vandana. There's a lot to learn, a lot for us to continue to better understand the experiences of folks. You've shared some great tools, information, resources with our listeners today. I'm curious, what's one thing you'd want our listeners to take away? What's one aha that you'd hope people had from our conversation?
Yeah, I would say that as I recited my story, I was scared earlier to claim my own identity. Whatever people called me, I accepted it. I would say never let that happen to anyone. You should be who you are and stand up for your own authentic self and what you believe in. Don't let someone else change you. And nobody should actually call you by someone else's name and force you to change it. So, claim your own identity would be my one takeaway for anyone who's listening. Make sure you stand up on your 2 feet for yourself first before you take care of anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Put the oxygen mask on. I got to remind myself, I'm actually right now as we speak, thinking about doing a little retreat into the woods, just some
Mhm.
time regrouping. This work is
Yeah.
exhausting. I mean, I
Mhm.
really think the reason DEI practitioners last on average less than 2 years is because
Mhm.
it's emotional labor. It doesn't stop. And there's no on and off switch. You have to deal with a lot of unfortunate comments from people that are well intentioned but hurtful just the same. And you constantly feel sometimes like the only one that cares about this, the only one that's frustrated that things haven't changed. So keep your oxygen mask on, listeners. Do some self care, even if it's just going for a walk or spending
Yeah.
time with people you care about or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a fancy vacation or spa day or anything like that. It just you need to keep your energy fresh as well. So I love that parting thought. One thing I would how can our listeners connect with you if they want to learn more about you and ask any other questions?
LinkedIn is my favorite social media tool, so to speak. I absolutely like it. And that is the best place you can find me. Most of my, I would say, videos, I do talk about DNI, I talk about digital, I talk about automation. So everything is out there. Whoever wants to reach, they can reach out.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Diversity Pivot podcast. Allies are necessary for positive change. If you're on the journey to becoming an ally, we invite you to participate in our new signature Lead Like an Ally online self-paced learning program. It's comprehensive and it includes an online learning platform packed with tools, stories, and ideas to become an even better ally. Head over to leadlikeanally.com to learn more.